Good morning.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Us being here together this morning is even more urgent because yet another family faces the murder of their loved one, and 3 other lives are changed forever, and our entire community is once again re-traumatized. It is a pleasure for me to be joined by my fellow survivors on this journey, Shannon, Hector, Julio, the mayor, the attorney general, Dr. Tab, Reverend Hammond, my staff, my board of directors. As the Louis D. Brown Peace Institute is a center of healing, teaching, and learning for families and communities impacted by murder, trauma, grief, and loss. As we mark 25 years of transforming Boston's response to homicide. In 1993, when my son Louis was murdered, I was in disbelief, in denial, and my life had been drastically changed. The night of his death, I left the hospital empty-handed, physically and within my soul, no resources and nowhere to turn to. One can never truly be prepared for when something tragic kicks down your doorstep. In the aftermath of Louis's murder, people questioned Louis's lifestyle and immediately portrayed him as someone who was gang involved. Yet when the word got out that he was a good student, an active member of the community, resources started to pour in. Though I was grateful for the help, it raised a question. What about other families? What about their families whose loved ones were not necessarily doing the right thing? And also, what about the families on the other side of homicide? How are they being treated? What support and resources are they receiving? Like me, they too are hurting and a need for support and healing. Prior to Louis's murder and until the development of the Peace Institute, our city lacked a coordinated response to homicide and an effective and equitable way to support families left behind, to navigate the whirlwind that is now part of our lives. And today, this battle still continues as we face in our city and in our country to ensure that all families are treated with dignity and compassion, regardless of who the victim was, the circumstances, and the community that they're from. Through our partnership with the survivors of homicide victims, the City of Boston, law enforcement, the medical community, the faith community, state agencies, our schools, and our community partners, Boston began to develop a response to homicide that is survivor-centered, culturally competent, practical, consistent, collaborative, communicative, and transparent. The Peace Institute has been an integral part in this process, and in its 25 years of community service, we have shifted the way the Boston community responds to homicide and the families impacted. We first started with the individuals, the organizations, and city and state agencies that were working with families, and we brought them to the table to develop necessary tools and resources needed to serve families, such as the Survivors Burial and Resource Guide. All of our Boston Trauma Hospital have purchased this Survivors Guide so that no family leaves the hospital empty-handed the way I did back in 1993. The Peace Institute has developed the best practices curriculum, survivor-centered training used to equip individuals with emotional, social, and financial tools to support survivors of homicide victims, starting with the death notification. With tools and expertise like this in place, the City of Boston has been recognized for its innovative approach. There is no other city in this country where this level of coordinated, consistent, and compassionate response to homicide has been established. As an integral part of the city and state, The Peace Institute is well positioned to take what we have learned and cultivated in Boston on a national scale. We are taking our focus beyond ending violence and gun control to building a national movement of waging peace and transforming society's response to homicide. Our first point of action is making the Survivors of Homicide Victims Awareness Month recognizable on a national scale. In Massachusetts, the time is recognized November 20th to December 20th. This only happened because of the survivors of homicide victims. Many of them are standing here today. This bill was introduced by former Senator Cheryl Jakes and then signed into law by then former Governor Cellucci. The Survivors of Homicide Victims Awareness Month has been an indispensable part of many of the survivors' healing journey as we deal with the additional and mixed emotions that arise during the holidays. Here are a few other states that have acknowledged this month that are watching Massachusetts. In 2017, North Carolina, Iowa, San Diego, and New Mexico. And in 2018, the U.S. Virgin Islands has followed suit. As we take on this audacious goal of transforming society's response to homicide and waging peace across our nation, there is still work that needs to be done in our own beloved city. Though we have come a long way, homicides continue to happen. Families are still hurting, and healing still needs to happen. In conjunction with our 25th anniversary, the Louis D. Brown Peace Institute will launch a strategic growth plan. We have opened the eyes and hearts of many to understand that we cannot continue to invest in teaching our children how to duck and roll from bullets, where they need to hide in the event of a mass shooting or gang shooting, or even bandage each other's wounds. While this approach is well-intended, we also know that this approach does not address the root cause of violence. For 25 years, we have been a key partner to the city of Boston, teaching peace to all children. Even as we look to the future, we cannot stress enough that the heart of the Peace Institute work will be its commitment to families affected by murder on both sides of the gun in our own backyard. Central to our vision for growth is the ability to transfer our knowledge and experience by sharing information and training others who can carry it forward in their own community. Now, central to our vision for sustainability and growth is the creation of a permanent home for the Peace Institute, a center of healing, teaching, and learning. Our goal is to raise the funds to create this center where we can continue to provide a neutral space where healing can happen. And unlike churches or government building, the Louis D. Brown Peace Institute will provide a space that is not anyone's turf. I thank you for joining me today. I'm inviting you to please walk with us at this year's Mother's Day Walk for Peace on May 12th. And let us all take the first step together, and we're asking you, the media, to help us raise the Survivors of Homicide Victims Awareness Month at the national level. Thank you, and I'll turn it over to who I consider a friend and a family, my mayor, Marty Walsh.
Thank you, Tina, and I'm going to talk about you in a minute. I want to just acknowledge a few other folks that are here today. Our District Attorney Rachel Rawlings is here. Thank you, District Attorney Rawlings, for being with us. Boston City Councilor Michael Flaherty. Thank you, Michael. Our Chief of Health and Human Services, Marty Martinez. Thank you, Marty. Our Director of the Boston Public Health Commission, Monica Valdez-Lupe. To all the families of lost loved ones, thank you for being here today. The mothers and fathers and brothers and sisters, thank you. This is a really complicated event to put together because it's a conversation that a lot of people could be at this podium. And if you don't see somebody at this podium, doesn't mean that they weren't on the list for a reason, but they do their work. And I want to thank you all for being here and being part of this important conversation. I'm not going to repeat everyone on the stage, but thank you to everyone behind us, the Attorney General, the Police Department, C11, Community Service next door, superintendents and deputy superintendents, the Police Department. Thank you for your work as well. The Peace Institute holds a very special place in my heart. Tina turned her grief into a powerful movement. Actually, Tina's family turned their grief into a powerful movement. She and her team have taught me a lot about healing, forgiveness, and how strong people can be. For 25 years, this organization has been a force for good and an agent for change. And I was saying inside that I was invited to the first meeting in Tina's kitchen to talk about the first walk. And at that point, I was sitting at a table thinking how powerful this woman is who lost her son not that long ago, and she's taking her grief and turning it into a walk for peace. And I thought the strength of her was amazing. This institute has been a great partner to the city of Boston. It's a vital part of our neighborhood trauma teams. Some of the folks are here from our neighborhood trauma teams. This institute has worked with the Public Health Commission for years to support survivors of homicides. This institute has worked together on gun safety. This institute has worked to bring fair victim compensation so no family is denied grief. This organization has helped changing the conversation. You're helping us about lifting people up and not locking people up. But we have a long way to go. Before I came in, I don't know if you saw, the press asked me a bunch of questions. And one of the questions was, I'm paraphrasing, was, do you think we're better today with violence in the street than we were 25 years ago? And my answer was, I think we are, but the difference is here with this institute. Well, but let me back up. What I said, I think we are different today than we were 25 years ago, except if you talk to a parent who lost a loved one. Because there's no different. Or a family member that lost a loved one. But what is different is this institute has allowed a place for grieving families to come to and sit down with people that have gone through their pain before they did. And that's the difference. And that's what this institute has done. We want to thank the legislature for passing major criminal justice reform bills last year at the State House. We're seeing it on our streets. And then my next few cards here talk about lowest incarceration rates and lower arrests, and they have been lower and they are lower. But we still have a lot of work to do as a community, as communities. Boston's elected a DA last year who's going to continue our progress, continue on working to really put people on pathways to success and working with them and getting them at their most vulnerable areas before they do something really bad to someone else. So there's a lot of great opportunities here. Change is happening, but one loss in our community is too many. And most people here know that better than anybody. That's why we're reaching higher. We're going to continue to invest in our communities, in education, in jobs, and opportunities that people deserve. This year in the city of Boston, we made historic investments in our schools and community centers, and we're working on gun safety and mental health issues. We're creating second chances for people with our Office of Returning Citizens and with programs like Operation Exit, reentry programs, where we're literally changing people's lives around. We're never going to stop working to make Boston safer and more peaceful. The Peace Institute is inspirational to us in the city of Boston, and I know it's inspirational to a lot of cities around America. It's been amazing to watch this organization grow and to see the mission stay the same, but how to get to that mission change. I'm proud to see that we're taking our message and your message, Tina, to a national level. I support the establishment of National Awareness Month, and I encourage all mayors across America to do the same thing. I want to thank Tina and her entire team, and her team is out here, and her team does the work. And I want to thank her team for the great work you do and the impact that you are having on so many families in the city of Boston and the impact you're having on so many people in the city of Boston. And I look forward on Mother's Day for the Mother's Day Walk for Peace, because that's where you truly see people come from all over the Commonwealth of Massachusetts who have struggled and had their own personal grief that their families and other people have had to deal with, come together to walk on a day that's there for us to remember our mothers. Remember the people who care for us. Remember the people that when everyone else shuts us out, it's generally we turn to our mothers, and our mothers don't shut us out. So I want to ask everyone here today to make sure that you spread the word so that down here the street, that we have too many people in that park that we have to be on the sidewalks. Thank you very much, and thank you for being here today.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Shannon Tan Giulini. I am a survivor of homicide. My son, Richard Matthew, was murdered October 5th, 2015 in the city of Brockton. The Louis D. Brown Peace Institute was there for me during the worst time of my life. And 3.5 years later, they are still here for me, lending loving support to my family and I. I am also involved in a group called Shares, based out of Brockton, which is for survivors of homicide. And I'm happy to announce that we are one of the first grantees to receive a grant from the Peace Institute. And soon we'll be presenting a memorial site for survivors of homicide in the city of Brockton. Thank you. The Peace Institute's mission is to spread knowledge, love, and support to families who have been affected by homicide. This not only affects we as the survivors of the victims, but also for the families of the incarcerated loved ones. Excuse me. This mission needs to be spread not only in the city of Boston, but nationally. Everybody needs to be treated with dignity and compassion. It doesn't matter where you live, nor the color of our skin. At the end of the day, we all share the same loss. We all share the heartache of losing a loved one. We all shed the same tears of grief. As survivors, we all know the toll that this journey has taken on all of us. Please spread the meaning of this mission of the Louis D. Brown Peace Institute and the knowledge, love, and support that Tina Chery has to offer to so many of us. And I personally would like to thank Danielle Bennett, Tina, and everyone here at the Peace Institute for being here for me for the last 3.5 years. Thank you.
Good morning, and thank you, Shannon, for your willingness to tell your story. And to all the survivors who are here this morning, thank you for your courage and your willingness to talk about the most unimaginable horror that you've confronted. And we really are lifted up by your inspiration. And we're lifted up by Tina Chery, who has been, as the mayor said, a force in our community for good for so long. And so to Tina and to the wonderful team at the Peace Institute, thank you guys for everything that you have done over the last 25 years. We're going to make even more change with more partners as we move forward over the next 25. And we look forward to marching with you at the annual Peace Walk next week. I can't think of a better place to actually be this morning. This is exactly where we're supposed to be in the wake of yesterday's incident. And there is no group of people who work harder to bring about true peace, to bring our community together, than the people who are represented here and, as importantly, out there. We all agree that no one should have to live in fear, and no one should have to shoulder their grief alone. And I'll just say just a couple of things. I have some notes. I'm not sure that I'll even use them. Look, we have a job to do in law enforcement to defend strong gun laws. Strong gun laws save lives. We're going to continue to do that work, and my office will continue to do that work. We have a job to get illegal guns that are being trafficked in and out of our neighborhoods, in our communities, and our state off of our streets. And we're going to work together, local, state, and federal law enforcement, to do that. We're going to work to provide services and resources to victims and survivors. I've been so happy about our ability as an office to work with Tina and her team, members of the legislature, other partners, to expand the kind of compensation we can provide to victims and their families, including those who are at the other end of the gun. So we're going to continue to do that work. You know we stand committed. But more than anything today, folks, I just want to say that what this moment and what this movement is about is addressing issues of trauma and violence. Because unless and until we address those root causes of violence in our communities, we're not going to get to where we need to be. I'm proud to stand here today with my partners in Tina Chery and Reverend Ray Hammond and Kevin Tabb. The partnership of the medical community is so important, of Mayor Walsh and his team, and of District Attorney Rachel Rollins for her commitment and her ideas. This is about partnership, and this is about working together. To members of the clergy who are here, to all the workers out on the streets who are every day engaging on this issue, to all the social service workers and psychologists and mental health therapists and doctors, you know, this is what it's all about. And I truly believe, and more than ever believe, that for us as a city, state, and country to end the scourge of violence that we're seeing in mosques, in churches, in homes, in schoolyards, on street corners, it's about dealing with pain and dealing with trauma. As Attorney General, I'll work with my colleagues to make this a national day, as it should be a national day, and I'm proud that Massachusetts has already led in that space. But more than anything, let today be a day of optimism, of inspiration, and of hope, and of renewed commitment to doing what we know needs doing for us to do right by our families and our communities. God bless you all, and to Julio, Hector, and Shannon, who today, along with Tina, represent the survivor community. Thank you for your bravery, and thank you for your inspiration, and I know we stand collectively committed, all of us, to doing all we can to live right and to do right in the memory of those we've lost.
Good morning. Hi, my name is Hector Acevedo, and in famous words of Prophet Muhammad, Assalamu alaikum, and peace be upon you all. I grew up in Boston. Fortunately for me, growing up in Boston, I lost too many friends either to the prison system or getting killed due to gang violence. So much so that it became a norm. I myself went down the wrong path and eventually developed a mentality in my late teenage years that I wouldn't make it past the age of 21, and I fully accepted it. It so happened that when I was 16 years old, I met an individual who understood my pain and struggle. His name is Mario, and he worked for the Peace Institute. We developed a strong brotherly bond, and he brought me to the Peace Institute and introduced me to Rachel, Tina, and Milton, who quickly they embraced me as their own, and I found myself constantly visiting the PI, which I felt was a safe space, a non-judgmental space where I was surrounded by family that loved, respected, and understood me. Being in this space, I realized how important the work that they do really is. There are so many organizations that offer many different types or forms of aid, but nothing like the PI. They offer a healing space for families who are dealing with trauma or are having a hard time coping with loved ones who were victims of a homicide, teaching families how to cope, heal, educating the community, and firmly promoting the importance of peace. I can't stress enough how important the work the PI does here in Boston. And truthfully speaking, not too many are doing what the PI is doing, and other states, I'm sure, are in dire need of the work that the PI does and has to offer. I hope Boston as a city and people never get to the point where we undermine or take this available gift of love, healing, and peace for granted. And in closing, I would like to leave you with these words. Before we are labeled murderers, drug dealers, or gangbangers, or victims, or any type of negative title or statistic, we all start off as an innocent child trying to navigate through poverty, low-income project housing, being a part of a family barely making ends meet, or growing up in a single-parent home. Thank you.
Good morning. Thank you, Attorney General Healy, Mayor Walsh, for everything that you do to advance peace and justice in our communities. Shannon and Hector, thank you for sharing your stories about how the Peace Institute has really made a meaningful impact in your lives. Advocates like you are so important in making changes in our communities. But most importantly, thank you, Tina. Thank you, Tina, for 25 years. You and your team have been tireless change makers and advocates for those that have been impacted by murder, grief, trauma, and loss. You honor your son Lewis's memory every single day with your passion, your energy, and your commitment. Boston is lucky to have you as a leader in our community, and we're proud to stand here with you, not just today, but every single day. You know, when I was first asked to be part of the Peace Institute's Mother's Day Walk a fair number of years back, I thought it sounded like a good, meaningful way to spend Mother's Day. I thought it was going to be one Mother's Day. But when we came, I had no idea how meaningful it was going to be to me, to my family, to my wife, to walk with thousands of others, to really harness the potential for more peaceful communities. There's now nowhere else that I would want to be on any Mother's Day. And I'm honored to serve as co-chair of the walk again this year. And I'll be joined this year by colleagues from across our new healthcare system, Beth Israel Lahey Health. Everybody in healthcare, all of us, we see and feel the impact of violence on our patients, on their families, and on the communities that love them. We see those things every single day. Healthcare organizations and local communities are vital partners in promoting peace. It's by working together that we can harness our collective strength. The long-standing partnership between Beth Israel Deaconess Medical Center and the Peace Institute is something that BIDMC is very proud of, and we know that it's had a meaningful impact. With this kind of collaboration, healthcare organizations and community advocates can really move the needle to address what has become a huge public health issue in our streets, in our schools, in our houses of worship, and in our workplaces. The Louis D. Brown Peace Institute has led the way on this critical work right here in Boston. And I know that the Peace Institute's next 25 years will be just as impactful and just as inspiring as its first 25 years, not just for us here in Boston, but around the country. Thank you for your leadership. We're honored to work with you.
Good morning, everybody. My name is Julio Sanchez. I'm not only a survivor of many homicides, I'm also a survivor of violence myself. In 2011, I got stabbed. 2 years later, I was shot. After being admitted to the hospital, I was introduced to a program out of Boston Medical, the center called Violent Intervention Advocacy Program, also known as VIOP. I trust no one. So many systems and social services have failed me, mistreated me. It was only because I knew someone who worked at the VIOP that I decided to try it on. Through the process, I learned that I had PTSD, was consistently fighting, freeze mode. Clinicians wanted to put me on medication. I refused. I wanted to be fully presented for my healing. I got connected to the Louis D. Brown Peace Institute through a close friend. I am so glad I trust them. Communication between this community, agency, and the clinicians, at VIOP is what created a hostile space for my healing. It was through my work with the Peace Institute that I was forced to look inward and discover that I have the power to create a reality where I feel emotionally and mentally safe. Too often, men and women who struggle, like myself, come across many barriers to access the service that they need, whether it's because of fear, mistrust, of the system, or an assumption that the services aren't for us. Because of the stigma placed on young black men in the inner city, more lives are at stake. If we do not reach out more to men, especially the ones on the street, it's important for our city and Commonwealth to work closely with community organizations to create more space that are safe for us. I always felt safe coming to the Peace Institute. There was no judgment, and the people truly love me. Love you, excuse me. I hope everyone here is in position of politician power. Listen closely, follow the leadership of communities, members, and those directly impacted by murder and trauma as we move towards creating a peaceful state. Thank y'all.
Good morning. Good morning. My name is Reverend Ray Hammond. I promise to be short. It is cold. And Charlita reminded me 2 times that I've only got 2 minutes. She knows how dangerous a combination of a preacher and a mic can be. It doesn't take long for me to tell you that I'm the pastor of Bethel AME Church, the chairman of the 10-Point Coalition here in Boston, but that most importantly, I'm here because I am a friend, I am a partner, I am an absolutely staunch supporter of Tina Chery, the staff, the board, all of those who are part of this Louis D. Brown Peace Institute. And that's for very real reasons. Long before trauma-informed services became the catchword that we now use so easily, they were performing those services for anyone and everyone who would come. Long before we began talking about how important it is for grief to become a place not just where people become paralyzed, but where people can grow. They were understanding just how important that growth process was. Growth so that families did not get stuck. Growth so that revenge was not the next step in the process. And one episode of violence led to many others thereafter. And most importantly, long before we understood this cycle in which victims and perpetrators are often moving back and forth, but most importantly, the families of both victims and perpetrators are suffering the pain. They were providing those services. They've been what they've promised to be. They said they were going to be a center for healing, and healing is what's taken place here. They've promised to be a place of teaching, and I can point as a pastor to the many things I've learned, and many of us who are in the position of working with people have learned because of the work of this Peace Institute. And they don't have it on their sign, but in fact, they have been incredibly powerful advocates. They've kept this issue before us and reminded us that we have to change ourselves, change our policies, change our practices. So I stand with the Peace Institute because they have put into practice what I try to preach every Sunday. They've made it real. They've put that word into flesh, and it's made an enormous difference for this entire region. And now I'm excited because I'm grateful that they're willing to reach out across the nation to both give and to receive. And I know that everything that they will receive in those partnerships will come back to be a blessing right here in the city of Boston. As I close out, I'm going to ask if you would join hands with your neighbors as we take a moment on this cold, gray, wet New England day to raise just a little bit of warmth as together we give thanks for 25 years of hard work and labor, 25 years of vision, 25 years of working, sometimes when you didn't know where the next set of resources were going to come from. 25 years of spreading this message of peace and justice, not just across the city of Boston, but throughout this region. And now we are believing that this gift, which has so richly blessed this city and region, will be the gift to this nation that it needs to be. And that as it spreads its wings and reaches its arms out, all of us will see grow closer that day that a prophet spoke about, when justice would roll down like a mighty water and peace like a never-ending stream. For this, as neighbors, friends, we are grateful. And together we say, Amen.
Amen. Can you close out? Thank you so much. We're available here. You're welcome to come inside and see for yourself what the Center of Healing, Teaching, and Learning looks like. Thank you so much, and God bless you.